A historic announcement after 4 decades of insurgency. Turkey's separatist Kurdistan Workers Party, the PKK, announcing its own dissolution. This is the follow-up to that March 1st announcement of a unilateral ceasefire by longtime jailed leader Ibrahim Öcalan.
It's a decision that could pave the way towards ending 4 decades of armed conflict with the Turkish state. The Kurdistan Workers Party, or PKK, has announced it has decided to dissolve its organisational structure and end its method of armed struggle. The decision was announced by a media outlet close to the group days after it convened a party congress in northern Iraq. It follows a call from jailed PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan back in February, who urged his fighters to disarm and dissolve. On the 1st of March, the PKK had already announced a unilateral ceasefire, but had attached conditions including the creation of a legal framework for peace negotiations. Monday's announcement is yet another step towards peace and could have far-reaching political and security consequences for the region, including in neighbouring Syria, where Kurds control the northeast. Abdullah Öcalan founded the PKK in 1978. Its initial aim was the creation of an independent Kurdistan in southeast Turkey. But in recent years, it's called for greater autonomy within Turkey instead. Tens of thousands of people have been killed in the fighting. The group is still considered a terrorist organisation by Turkey, the EU and the US. A spokesperson for Turkey's AK party says the PKK's decision is an important step towards a terror-free country, and that the disbanding process will be closely monitored in the field by the state.
And for more, we're joined by Amberin Zaman, the chief correspondent covering the Middle East and North Africa for the news website Al Monitor. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Thanks for having me.
First, that March announcement by Ibrahim Öcalan of a ceasefire, and now this. How do you explain it?
Well, you have to look at the background. Turkey began secret talks with Abdullah Öcalan, who is, in a Turkish prison, has been there since 1999, back in April of last year. And this was immediately after the Turkish ruling party, the AKP, lost local elections. And this is because the opposition defeated them with the support of Kurdish voters. So what's been going on essentially is Erdogan, the Turkish president, trying to drive a wedge between the opposition and the Kurds and to win over the Kurds to his side. Why? Because his term expires in 2028 and he cannot run a third time, and he's desperate to remain in power, and he believes the only way he can do that right now is if he can win Kurdish support, to change the constitution in ways that would allow him to do that. And so this is the background to all of this.
And we have plenty of reactions coming in. Let's start with that of Recep Tayyip Erdogan's own government. Let's listen to the foreign minister. We don't have that soundbite, but basically hailing the move. However, there's no counterparts right now. There's no, the Turkish government didn't announce, the PKK has been asking for a legal framework for peace negotiations, nothing on that, no guarantees. This is very much a unilateral announcement.
Very much so. I mean, the process from the get-go has been one of basically the government dictating the terms of peace, if that's what we can call it, to the PKK, saying, you have to capitulate, do what I tell you to do, and then we can eventually talk about some reforms that would help address some of the, issues that the Kurds care about. But so, of course, that begs the question of why would the PKK even agree to doing something like this? 40 years of fighting in the name of winning rights for their people.
And they've been burned before in negotiations.
Well, yes, they have indeed. This is the third time this government has been engaged in peace talks with them. But the key issue to understand here is that Abdullah Öcalan is almost a godlike figure in that movement. And his word is enough and has proved to be enough for his fighters to go along with what he's saying. But we also have to note that things have changed quite dramatically in recent years. The Turkish military has gained significant, I would say, dominance in the field against the PKK with these drones that we all hear about that are used in other conflicts. Turkish-made drones have put the rebels squarely on the defensive. And in Syria, of course, with the collapse of the Assad regime, Iran is out and the Russians no longer have the same kind of influence they did, which has reduced the PKK's ability to maneuver inside Syria, which was another very important theater for their operations, because we all know that the Syrian Kurdish group that's in power there has very close links to the PKK, with many of them actually having fought inside the PKK for long years.
Yeah, and the Syrian Kurds who at first said this doesn't concern us, but we've had in the last hours the SDF commander, Mazloum Abdi on X, formerly Twitter, stating that it's a decision worthy of respect. So what do you make of that statement?
Well, they're kind of, in a sense, the winners in all of this. Why? Because as a result of these talks and the PKK's decision to go along with what Öcalan told them to do, which is to end the fight with Turkey, Turkey has stopped its attacks against the Syrian Kurds because, as you know, since 2016, Turkey has launched repeated ground offensives. It's been.
But does that have more to do with the PKK or the fact that you have the new masters of Damascus who've concluded a deal with the SDF?
Well, one would argue that if Turkey had not green-lighted that agreement, it may not have happened, because we all know that Turkey does have quite some influence over the new masters of Damascus, over the HTS, over Jolani, or Ahmed al-Shara, as he now calls himself, his real name. So, in fact, when Turkey was saying that we will never allow any kind of Kurdish autonomy, nothing. And when they spoke of Abdi, he was a big terrorist, and they in fact tried to kill him several times. This is what Abdi himself told me when I interviewed him on several occasions. And he's on Turkey's most wanted list of terrorists. But right now, Turkey has stopped using the word terrorist when it refers to the Syrian Kurdish groups, and it's allowed this agreement in Aleppo, this is a bit in the weeds, whereby the Kurds of Aleppo are allowed to run their own neighborhoods there, provide their own security, maintain their own schools. Turkey has allowed that agreement, which is seen as a blueprint for the future of the broader Kurdish region in Syria, to go forward. And it's more than likely that Turkey is also talking to the Syrian Kurdish leadership now about other arrangements going forward.
Amberin Zaman, at the outset of the conversation, you said it was all, from Ankar's perspective, it's all about that constitutional reform that allows Recep Tayyip Erdogan to seek another term. At this point in time, what are the chances that this will lead to some kind of, like you say, recognition of rights for Kurds in the southeast of the country and elsewhere?
It's a big question because, he has to take public reaction into account, Erdogan. And, we know that he's constantly looking at the poll numbers to see where this is going in terms of how the public is reacting. Because this whole process was shrouded in secrecy. The public wasn't really prepared for it. And we now know that some concessions are being made, whereby Öcalan, for example, is being moved to more comfortable surroundings on that island prison where he lives. And of course, for many Turks, he was long called a baby killer and seen as such, because that was the official narrative about him, the PKK. And of course, many Turkish soldiers have died fighting the PKK, so they're wondering, what is going on.
And speaking of people in jail, the leader of the center-left opposition, the mayor of Istanbul, is currently behind bars. The CHP's party leader putting out some statements on social media saying the PKK decision is critical. I'll read to you another one here, Amberin, saying the CHP will not allow people's demands for peace and democracy to be exploited for personal political purposes. Is that a remark directed at Recep Tayyip Erdogan or at Öcalan?
I would say more at Erdogan. Of course, the fact of the matter is that, normally this would be a historic moment, time for celebration, jubilation, ending 4 decades of conflict. People won't be dying anymore, hopefully. But it's all we're all left with a bit of a bitter taste in our mouths because, while this is happening on the Kurdish front, the main opposition pro-secular party is under tremendous pressure from the government. As you pointed out, the mayor of Istanbul, who is seen as the man most likely to be able to beat Erdogan in a presidential election, has been locked up on very thinly supported corruption charges. Many other CHP opposition politicians are also being prosecuted, jailed, ousted from office, elected mayors. So, how can we talk about democracy while, on the one hand, this is happening, right? So it's a very bizarre, let's say, moment.
And it's too early to know, as you say, which way public opinion is going to go.
Indeed.
All right, Amberin Zaman, I want to thank you so much for being with us here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Stay with us. There's much more to come, more news, plus the day's business and sports.